and welcome to the Chaps podcast. On this episode, well, it really is the postseason, so we're going to chat about. We're just going to have a bit of a chat, but we are going to cover some of the ongoing legal proceedings. Please don't switch off before you hear what I've got to say about that. What's happening in the conference carousels. And we're going to chat a little bit about our fictional campus tour that we dream about completing one day. And if you have been waiting long and weary for the results of our Union Jack Classic competition, we have those at the end, so please stick around for that. But first, we are the Chaps and Josh, and I'm joined by the Morecambe and Wise of the college football world, Ollie and Alex. How are you both? What have you been up to?
Don't know which one is which here, in all honesty. And to be honest, I don't really mind which it is either. Great introduction for an off-season podcast, George. I love it. I like you talk about we're going to talk about college football law, and almost like we were teeing it up to have like a list college football law related guest like Tom Mars or something. But who's better to talk about law than me and Alex, who at least one of us has been on the wrong side of it at some point in their life.
Scurrilous rumours, unless of course you've got penalty points against your name, but
That's a different story altogether.
All allegations. Morecambe and Wise finished their comedy career 10 years before I was born, George. So just wanted to rub that in.
Well, I thought that introduction wasn't going to work on many levels. It wasn't going to work for our US listeners, and it wasn't going to work for the vast majority of people who listen to this podcast who were born post the 1970s. But it works for me, so hey ho, you know.
It's all that matters.
That is all that matters, to be perfectly honest. Right, okay. I was actually going to ask you how you were getting on, what you were doing, but we seem to have skipped past that. I was going to have a bit of a moan, but I don't think I am now. I think I've worked myself out a little bit. Let's talk about.
Have a moan, George.
No. It's just this is maybe not the time or the place, but I had an interaction with an agent this week. About a guest for the podcast, and I'm really, really lucky. We don't have much interaction with agents, but this agent was really very interested in, as you'd expect, doing the job, right? They're doing the job, trying to work out what we do, and it wasn't an easy transition. It wasn't someone in the sporting world. I was trying to diverse into other areas, but it became this quite protracted communication about. It ended up being how many listeners and how many downloads and how many advertising minutes you have and stuff like that. So I'm guessing that person won't be coming on the podcast, but I never had that before. I know it happens, but it was the first time it ever happened.
Well, I hope the agent isn't listening to this podcast as a measure of whether they should allow their client to be on it or not.
Well,
after that.
Well, they did ask for examples. So first time anyone's asked for example, and it wasn't just example; it was examples, please. So
I think we've got plenty of examples we can send. Just don't send this one.
This is the People's Podcast.
We've got 245 examples to send them. So, but yeah. I don't know. I just it got my back up. So I don't think we're going to hear from them again. I got a nice response saying thank you, how interesting, which didn't sound an awful lot like we're rushing to get our guest onto the podcast. Right, let's talk about the law. Right, it just strikes me that there just seems to be never-ending court cases, and we're going to talk specifically about eligibility here, right? Although we'll touch a little bit on the Cincinnati situation at the end of this, but so much of it so far has been about eligibility. It's been about Trinidad Chambliss. I can't say he's won because he hasn't, but he's managed to get a stay of execution, which probably means, you tell me if I'm wrong, probably looks as if he's going to at least start the season at Ole Miss. Joey Aguilar, not quite so lucky. He's had his request turned down. And then you've got Brendan Sorsby, who we'll touch on a little bit, and Chandler Morris, who's come into the equation over the last couple of days. So my question to you both is, this seems like a real mess. If it is a mess, because you may argue it isn't, how do we get it fixed? Or is this a price we pay for player freedom?
I kind of feel like you used the word argue, so I'm going to let Alex go first because that's Alex's wheel. I'll just agree with everything that everyone says, and then it's Alex's wheelhouse to argue. So I'll let him go first.
I think they take it a bit too far. Some of the athletes, right? You get your time, you go and do your time, and then you graduate. You're supposed This is supposed to be while you're in college, not in there as a 28-year-old who's been playing for 10 years. Like it's not a pro league. If you're good enough to play in the pro league, you'll get drafted and you'll play in the pro league. And I think yes, the collegiate athletes deserve to be able to make money whilst they're playing in college, but we can't fully let the inmates run the asylum here. There has to be structure in place. There has to be rules. There has to be a playing field that is never going to be level, but is at least somewhat level in what it's doing. And I think when you lose the collegiate element of college sports, that's where it's going to start to tumble away from what we want it to be, and what we love about it, which is that these games are played on college campuses and they are played in small towns, and the whole town comes out, the small city and the whole city comes out to watch these games. And I think that is the element that's most at risk with some of these rulings of athletes being able to go and play 5, 6, 7 years of collegiate football. Obviously they don't play in all 7 years, but you know, not everyone gets to have the perfect story. That's the beauty of sport, is that when that perfect story comes around, it is unique rather than being something that everyone gets to have. So, I don't love this. I don't love the idea of, you know, I think if you're really are wronged, then yeah, go and sue the NCAA and find your way back in. But I think there's a lot of this that's not right and not fair on the kids that are coming through right now.
Yeah, you raise an excellent point right at the very end. Let's not do that as a disservice. The whole thing was an excellent point, but an excellent point right at the very end, because when you look at the examples you mentioned, George, you look at Trinidad Chambliss, you look at Joey Aguilar, you look at excuse me, Chandler Morris. Let's leave Brendan Salisbury aside because that's a different legal matter altogether. But you use those three examples specifically. One of those three individuals has gone about this process in the way that Alex just worded. He was wrong. Trinidad Chambliss was wrong. He was wronged by the administration at Ferry State, who didn't file the paperwork correctly for his medical redshirt. He was, by all the NCAA's rules, regulations, eligibility criteria, and everything, like he met that criteria. It was a paperwork error at Ferry State that they hadn't filed the medical red shirt correctly. So Trinidad Chambliss is a very different case to a guy like Chandler Morris, who just wasn't good enough to beat out Max Duggan at TCU, and now wants to play football forever, like Peter Pan, or the Peter Pan of the college football world, or Joey Aguilar. To be fair, he's chasing an opportunity based on the ruling for Diego Pavia about junior college, but some of these kids were in junior college in the first place for a reason. And coming back to Alex's point about it's supposed to be playing sports while you're in college, not the college element is a secondary, the academics is a secondary. There's a reason why some players were at the level they were at to start, and saying that, oh well, it's not fair that I was at that level in the first place. I'm not buying that. Now obviously there's exceptions to that rule, and you look at it as a case by case situation. But where those three cases are concerned, you've got a guy who has a right to go to bat in Trinidad Chambliss, and two guys in Joey Aguilar and Chandler Morris who to me don't really have a case to make. And I think it's interesting that you look at where Joey Aguilar's court case was held, right in the heart of Tennessee. Like, if it was going to be a place where he could win a case, it was there, and he didn't win it. I think it's pretty simple and straightforward, and it's really important that there's the the clarification and real set borders and defining boundaries of what we are and aren't doing in this current landscape, because it is a mess, and you can't blame the players really at all for trying. You look at a guy that's been granted a ninth year of eligibility. If you're a guy who's going, oh, I just want my 6th year, like it's hard. It's hard to not at least try and state your case when there's that sort of thing going on. And I think that's an issue as well. There's so many different precedents being set left, right, and centre where all this stuff is concerned that it's just a minefield.
But if you go back to Alex's very first point about trying to retain it as the collegiate athletics that we know and love, that ship has sailed. That the train has left the station, right? You had, don't want to keep on picking on them. You had Carson Beck, who graduated 2 seasons ago, right, and then played football for an additional 2 years, right? So why did he do that? He did that because he was getting paid $4 million and a couple of Lamborghinis, right? In the same way as you're right, Trinidad Chambliss was wronged, but if the money wasn't there to keep him in college athletics, he'd be in the NFL, right? Because
yeah,
that's the dichotomy we've got in college athletics now, which is because the money's come in, the path was well worn. You come to college athletics, you ply your trade, you get good enough to move to the NFL, you get drafted, you make your money there. Now we all agree that we think the student athletes should get paid, but now we're in this almost parallel universe where the players are holding back. And to Alex's really good point, what's going to do is you're going to have a logjam at both ends. Or actually, no, you've got a logjam at one end for athletes who are trying to come through. They're not going to get the playing time. But I've talked about this before. What happens to the NFL when the talent doesn't start coming through to the NFL, right? Because it's going to be delayed by at least a year, if not longer. And I think that's where we find ourselves. Something's going to happen. I think the political pressure, I use those words advisedly, is going to come where something's going to have to be done. And I just don't know I don't know what that is.
Yeah, and like I say, you can't blame a guy like Joe Aguilar looking at Carson Beck getting $4 million a year, or Darian Mensah getting $4 million a year to play quarterback in the ACC. Like, you can't fault him. I'm not saying that you can't fault him for trying, but the issue is that precedent's been set, and it's been facilitated to have those long, protracted things. Like, yeah, sure, you don't need to be in a rush to get to the NFL after 3 years. Like, I remember talking about Trevor Lawrence on this podcast when we first started, and it was like, oh, Trevor Lawrence should go straight to the NFL. Those were the conversations we're having there about eligibility. Like they do in basketball, 1 year and done, get straight to the NFL. Like, no one wants that. But play 4 years instead of 3. Like, if that's the goal, to chase a bit of money while you're in college, play 4 years instead of 3, rather than this. Well, I want to stick around forever. Like, that's the crux of the issue.
I think it's really interesting though, looking at the NCAA and coming back to George's point about pressure potentially coming down from the NFL. And the reason that they play 1 year in college and basketball is because the NBA put pressure on the NCAA to make the kids go to college, because they were getting loads and loads of these kids declaring for the NBA draft that were nowhere near good enough to play in the league. And you had these 18-year-olds on rosters. Not every 18-year-old is LeBron James or Kobe Bryant. Not every 18-year-old is Trevor Lawrence. And look, Trevor Lawrence hasn't had a great pro career. Compared to what he was in college, he's not had a great pro career. So, I do think that there is more change going to come, and I think the NFL will have a part to play in that. How much of a part, I don't know, because I think college football is a bigger entity than college basketball is. Basketball's a way more global game, and the NBA kind of sees itself as the global governing body for the sport of basketball in a way. Not 100%. Yeah, the global governing body exists, but when the NBA leads, the rest of the world follows on basketball. They do a lot more worldwide than the NFL does for football because it's nowhere near as much of a global game. So I do think that college football is in a better position to ride out this political landscape and storm at the minute and kind of shape things to how it suits them and how it suits the bigger conferences and the bigger colleges.
Yeah, I don't know how it plays out, but I think something will happen. I think there will be regulatory changes in some aspect, and just you just have to follow Ross Dellinger on Twitter to think that he's actually now become a lawyer, because he spends so much time sitting outside a courthouse waiting on judicial agreements coming through. Before we move on from this, we touched at the outset about Brendan Sorsby, and you're right, Ollie, it's a completely different set of conditions. But this is again has been interesting, and there's been a couple of these scenarios so far. Jaden Rashada at Florida, although that didn't get to legal proceedings. But obviously, Sorsby has moved on from Cincinnati to Texas Tech. He's obviously signed some NIL agreements on the way through, and now there's legal proceedings forthcoming from Cincinnati. This to me is a much bigger mess than the eligibility side of things. What do you think?
I think.
I'm
Sorry,
surprised
go
this
on.
hasn't happened more. Honestly, you're getting these young kids to sign contracts that they're probably not fully reading through. Yeah, and I'm sure they have lawyers and agents and NIL agents, but you know, agents, the stereotypes around agents exist for a reason. And the agents, they're business people themselves. They'll be looking to make as much as they possibly can, and they do that by getting their clients the most money as they possibly can. So, they're not always going to look out for the facts or for the best interests of their clients. And sometimes they're going to forget that these are 18, 19-year-old kids that are signing these deals and not really understanding that, when you sign these deals with these colleges, these college teams, they're going to have powerful lawyers. They're going to have real contractual legal agreements especially if you're signing them with boosters and outside companies outside of the college. These guys they're rich for a reason. Like they'll take care of things and they're going to tie some of these things up legally. And I think it's a massive loophole. Sorry, a massive legal issue potentially incoming in the next few years as the idea around sport and money kind of comes to a head um, with it all because there's always the next athlete off the production line. The schools are going to back their boosters to the ends of the earth because they're the guys that fund the programs, guys, men and women that fund the programs.
Oliver?
Yeah, I think we wouldn't dwell on it too far, but I think you get into a point where you're going to have to start having buyout clauses in these contracts. It's a difficult you're at a difficult pivot point because coaches can leave and go to another program and leave the players in the dirt. Like the Lane Kiffin situation at Ole Miss, the more you hear from Ole Miss players, the more frustrated, agitated truths come out about that situation. So it's hard to say to a kid, well, a coach can do this, but you can't. Well, why can coaches do that? Because they pay the buyouts out of the contract. So if you've got an NIL contract with a team and you want out, you're going to have to buy your way out of it. So don't spend that $1 million you got because you might have to give 500,000 of it back. And that's just a fact of contracts. And if that's the way it's going to go, you're going to have to get smart about and savvy about those sort of things. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, this is complete madness to me. I take Alex's point, but what are you paying advisors for? if you're not understanding what it means to break the contract, and they are getting paid money to do this, and they're quite happy and willing to take the money, but then someone like Texas Tech comes along and offers you more. Now, maybe the timing wasn't great, I don't know, but we've seen this time and time. Quinn Ewers was probably the first one that we started talking about when he was at Ohio State, right? He took the NIL money and then moved swiftly to Texas, and there was a bit of hoo-ha about that, but not as much as there is now. And to Ollie's point, I think Georgia have started putting in these kind of, I wouldn't call them buyout clauses, but certainly clauses which are preventative in nature for a player who's moving on. And I think it goes as far to say, well, if you move on, you have to pay the money back. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Now, next topic, I can see the sparkle in Oliver's eyes as we move on to a little bit of action. I'm just going to leave you to prattle on for the next 10 minutes, Oliver. To be honest, Sacramento State, what does this mean for the conference?
I mean, it means a massive injection of money to every other team in the MAC. That's the starting point. Sacramento State have paid a ridiculously large amount of money to enter the MAC, $23 million. They're going to pay for all the teams that have to travel to California from Michigan, basically, which is the MAC, or UMass, Buffalo. Any team that has to travel to Sacramento State is getting basically a paid holiday in the sunshine from the cold, dark, miserable nature that MAC should exist in. So that's what the MAC is getting in terms of the headline figure. In terms of football product, we're going to talk about another FCS move a little bit later on. This is a very different move to, I think, almost any of the FCS moves we've seen recently. James Madison came from the FCS as an absolute powerhouse. Jacksonville State, Sam Houston had been at the top of FCS football, and that isn't the football program that Sacramento State really is. They had some success under Troy Taylor in the early 2020s, but other than that, this is an FCS team with a losing overall program record. So this isn't a powerhouse by any stretch of the imagination that's coming in. It's great for the MAC in terms of a foothold in a different market, and that's what we're all about right now in college football. We're all about different markets and TV deals and whatnot. So it's kind of great for the conference there. Spread its coast. It becomes a coast to coast conference. We have the ACC becoming, fully, truly coast to coast. And they say global then, but it's global within the confines of America. So it's certainly an interesting time for MAC. I don't think Sacramento State brings the same level of prestige as some of the FCS moves we've seen recently. The MAC, are the MAC going to care about that? Probably not. It's interesting because they've always been a program that's been a conference, that as the conference realignment wheels have turned, they've always been one that's kind of been steadfast in maintaining an even keel, and they broke that with UMass joining the conference, but then NIU flipped to the Mountain West, and they kind of got back on an even keel, and then they welcomed Sacramento State in to tip the numbers into the odd favor again. So it's going to be interesting. They had a lot of their best players leave this offseason. They're probably going to be able to pick up some guys from the transfer portal who are kicking around and want to play FBS football. Some of the top FCS players that haven't been picked up yet, they may be able to bring some of those on board. But they've got a new head coach as well. Brennan Marion went to be offensive coordinator at Colorado. So you're bringing in a team with a new head coach, a lot of new players, playing a very different level of football, even in the MAC. It's going to be interesting to watch. But I'm not sure how many people are going to get at 4:00 on a Tuesday afternoon, because they're going to have to. Conference has already said they're going to have to play to the max rules in terms of kickoff time. So you're going to have a 4 p.m. Pacific time kickoff against UMass on a Tuesday night. I'm not quite sure. Tuesday afternoon, I'm not sure how many people are going to be in the stadium there. It's super interesting situation.
I think it's a little bit of a smart move though from the MAC, because now they're coast to coast as a conference. You've got UMass on the East Coast. You've now got Sac State on the West Coast. So you've got an opportunity there to be seen and to get eyes on your conference that a lot of these smaller group of five conferences don't get, whether that little bit more regionalized in who they are. I think for Sacramento State, you're taking the next 3-4 years to try and build a program that's capable of jumping again into the Mountain West or
Well,
um,
I think this is the thing, right? So
the
they
Pac-12.
claim
Something like that.
they claim they've got this $35 million pool to jump to the Pac-12 a year ago, around a year ago. This time last year, it was they were raising all this capital to get to the Pac-12, and clearly the Pac-12 didn't want them at that time. So I think you're right, Alex. It's a 4-year springboard because it's only a 5-year deal. It's only a 5-year deal with the MAC. So I think Sac State looks at it as a springboard to try and get into the Pac-12, which again that'll be an interesting conversation to have 3-4 years from now, whether they've actually been able to achieve that
Mm.
goal of being competitive at the FBS level and making themselves more attractive. Um, because it's not like the Pac-12 isn't without some heavy hitters like Boise State, for example. Say Boise State wins the Pac-12 3 years in a row and makes the college football playoff 3 years in a row. Like other teams are going to want to get in the Pac-12 as well, and it's going to be almost like an arms race to join that conference as well, which will be an interesting counter story to the plot twist to kind of plot over the next few years.
Well, I think when that happens, sorry, I know we've gone off script here. I genuinely think you'll see one of USC and UCLA go back. One of Washington and Oregon potentially go back, but maybe not Oregon. Oregon have had a lot of success, even moving over to the Big Ten. But I just think that spot in the playoff will start to become more and more lucrative.
Oh, I should just say exactly the same thing, which is it brings a whole new dynamic to that those conferences. In that's the easier, so-called easier route to get in. Now, that's not necessarily an easy route for the teams in those conferences, but if a powerhouse decides to step back, and it becomes a route into the playoffs, it'll be an episode for another time is where the college football playoff is likely to go, frankly, and I think there's a lot more dancing around that to come. Although you talked about FCS powerhouses. There's been no one bigger in FCS over the last 10 years, arguably, than North Dakota State, who find themselves in the Mountain West. I think this is quite exciting, actually. I think this adds quite a bit to the Mountain West. But what were your thoughts when you saw them move across?
Yeah, I think it's a move that a lot of people have expected for a long time. I think the only thing really that people kind of threw out there as a reason for them not to make the move was just how successful they have been at the FCS level. Like you looking at a program that is basically the favourite to win the FCS national championship every single year. And I think a lot of people looked at a transition to the FBS as like what's in it for them, like as a level of prestige. Well, I think they can come in and compete in the Mountain West pretty much straight away. They obviously can't for 2 years. They can't compete for a title or a national championship at the FBS level. Although they are trying to challenge that eligibility ruling, but it's a logical move. I think the timing for NDSU is interesting in the fact that you only have to look a couple of weeks after they've joined the FBS, and Sacramento State have already had to pay an absolute boatload more. And teams are going to start looking, FCS teams are going to start looking at the likes of James Madison coming up and being able to compete, Sam Houston turning it around in year 2, Jacksonville State being competitive in Conference USA from the get-go. Like those teams that have been able to come up and be competitive, more teams are going to want to make the jump. That's the FBS is where the money's at. The cost of getting into the FBS, I think, is going to start rising very, very quickly as more teams want to get on. So for NDSU, there's a financial timing element, I think. It seems like, obviously, I'm not based in Fargo by any stretch of the imagination, and far go through it. But there seems to be, from what people are saying around that neck of the woods and that program, that almost like an element of fatigue with NDSU, like that relentless winning. And there's more teams jump, more of the powerhouses like James Madison jump to the FBS level. There's almost a fatigue with NDSU fans where like winning the FCS every year isn't enough anymore. And you can't afford to have dwindling attendances. You can't afford to have apathy around your program, especially a program that has been so strong, so competitive, like constantly produces NFL talent by passionate fan bases that travel. Like you need to keep that, you need to maintain it, and making the move to the Mountain West at a time of transition for that conference, I think it's going to work out perfectly for them. So I think the timing's right, and it's great. From being a pure college football fan, I think it's great to have that program on the national stage, like a fully national stage. Because with as much love and will in the world, like the FCS does not draw that same level of attention. So I think it's great for the sport to have that brand as a part of the top tier of the sport.
Feels like they got a little bit bored.
Yeah.
And decided now's the time for us to jump in and have a go. I think they'll become a little bit of an also ran in the FBS, but like you say, the money's better. It's an FBS program, or it has been an FBS program for 10 years, 10, 15 years. And it just needed to make the jump, and the timing obviously works out right now for them to make the jump. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens.
We hold on to those words that they were bored winning, and then throw them back in 3 years and see how they feel about it then and how many coaches they've gone through. But you're right. I think they've been an FBS team for some time. They've dominated the competitions they've been in. Right. We're going to wrap up with the start of our 2026-27 great tour across United States. And what I thought we would do is let's start up in the Great Northwest and we can work our way around about the country, right? So let's start up in the Great Northwest. There's a number of places that you would want to go to. I know, Alex, you've been to that part of the world, but where are you going to start your 2026-2027 Great College Chaps tour from? Ollie, where are you going to start?
Well, this one not what I was expecting at all, George. I thought this was a either or situation that we're having here. You said Ann Arbor or Columbus, and I was going to say neither of them places.
No, we've moved on. We've chatted for so long. We've overrun the script, and I actually think it's a much better idea to kickstart the tour somewhere rather than somewhere random. So let's start up in the Northeast.
We're going to do like a proper tour of the entirety of the college football landscape in America. Where we start in the birthplace, right? We start in Piscataway, we start with Rutgers, and then we go from there.
Good Lord.
This is going to be another hour on this episode, George. You've got Ollie talking about.
I did I did think about just because we're over time, and I just thought, right, we could just cut it short there. And I thought, no, because we've gone to the bother of putting it on the script. And then I decided to do a quick kind of like shuffle, and Ollie's like, no, we're not having any of that. Let's
such thing as a quick shuffle.
Let's get across.
Shuffle. I'm talking like travel.
I tell you, I wouldn't be starting my great college football tour in Rutgers. I'll tell you that for not very much.
You're clearly not a man of tradition and taste, George. You're just so diluted by your southern nonsense.
You'll notice.
You can't see the origins of this great sport.
Well, did you not notice that I started about as far away from the Southeastern Conference as you could possibly get, up in the Great Northwest? I even called it the Great Northwest. When you took that, hand of hospitality and chucked it back in my face.
Did you say Northwest? Oh, sorry, I wasn't listening. I just heard you say North.
Oh,
Northeast.
well, I've been to Eugene. I've not been to a game there. I'd love to go to a game there. The University of Oregon is a wonderful campus, especially if you are a sports nerd such as myself. Um, I loved it. It's such a cool place, and I'd love to go back and watch an actual game there. I'm gonna stick an honorable mention on Husky Stadium as well because that in October I had been to a game there. Luckily, I was very lucky to go to a game there, and that is one of the most beautiful stadiums in the world, looking out over the big lake in Seattle.
Seattle's a great city as well, right? I mean, I'd eagerly advise anyone who's going to the States to go to Seattle because it's just a great part of the country, I think. And am I right in saying that Pullman's in the middle of nowhere? I mean,
Yes, it is.
legitimately in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it is one of these campuses which is very difficult to get to. Someone's going to shout me down for that, but it does look as if it's in the middle of nowhere.
So
Ollie's
I
still in New
know
York.
three people that went to school there, and they were all married before they were 23. So that tells you what there is to do in in Pullman.
Have you made it out of Rutgers yet? Maybe
I
going to
thought you said. I
maybe
just thought
going
you
to
said. I
Hofstra?
just thought you said. I just thought you said Northeast. So
Hmm.
I go from Rutgers to Syracuse, and then
Alex and I started over here, and you're over. I'm
well,
going to get a
me,
map, a big
Will,
map up, and you're over here, right? And at some
yeah,
point we may meet in the middle.
me and yeah, that sounds good to me. It's kind of basically what we do every August when we go to Manchester. So
Very true. Well, maybe
just
maybe
on a
next
grander scale.
maybe next episode we'll understand what the task is, and we
Well, I mean, maybe if we deviate away from the script that you send, George, then we wouldn't have any of these issues.
keeping you lads on your toes. Alex got it. He got the menu. Right, okay, we'll move
Oh,
on.
yeah, threw me under the bus first.
The look in your face, the eyes gave away. Like, what are you talking about? What on earth are we doing here? I like
Can't wait for that agent to get this episode.
this episode may never make the airwaves, to be perfectly honest. Right, competition time. The not last episode before, we kindly had Thomas Hensey of Union Jack Classic on, and he gave us some stuff to give away. We had some pretty good interest in our competition, so we have four winners, and the four winners are Brett Curwood, Frank Saunders, Stuart Taylor, and Canes Across the Pond podcast. So I will reach out to you, let you know what you've won, and then we can get stuff in the post to you. So thank you for entering. And neither Ollie or Alex won because you didn't enter.
Well, I didn't think we were allowed. I presume there'd be some sort of like rules and regulations.
Well, that's very true. I think there would have been an outcry if you'd won, to be perfectly honest. But anyway,
Yeah.
I digress. That's all the time we have on this episode. Thank you to Ollie and Alex for their brilliant, sometimes average input. Meandering, I think, is the right way to go. Thanks to you for listening and continuing to support us. Stay safe and well, and catch you all next time.